All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0, of course, are brought to us by the official beer of the program. We're talking Johnny, Cuba. We've got football this weekend. We got college football starting. European roots, a Caribbean soul. Enjoy a refreshing German lager in a can. That's what we're going to be doing, watching college football on the couch in the Zaslow Mansion family room. Go to johnnycuba.us. You use the Johnny Locator. You find the nearest location to you to pick up a six-pack for yourself. Make sure you always drink responsibly. And, of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Every Thursday now, it's football season. Our pal is Jamey Eisenberg. CBS Sports Fantasy Football helps us set our lineups, all that good stuff once the season starts. Jamey, thanks for hanging out with us. A few, headline topics that we'll get to here. Let me start out asking about Travis Hunter. Where is he projected to go in drafts? What do you make of the season he could potentially have?
I'm excited. He's one of these guys. We talk about this on our Fantasy Football Today podcast on CBS Sports a lot, of this blob of wide receivers, basically from like 20 to 40. There's so much potential, so much upside. As you obviously start to go down, depending on the rank list, you look like there's a lot more concerns and cons. So he right now is around wide receiver 30 for me, but I have him in PPR where you're getting rewarded for catches in like the round 5-6 range. And so I'm expecting him to be to play enough, if not predominantly on offense. He's going to play both sides. As long as he doesn't, deal with any injuries, he's going to try and do this as much as he possibly can. And so based on what their team looks like, he is going to be a starting wide receiver. He may not be a full-time cornerback just in how they operate, but I think just from an offensive perspective, he could be very dominant in this offense, because Liam Cohen, the new head coach, if you look at what he did in Tampa Bay, he funneled targets to two guys. It was Mike Evans and Chris Godwin until they got hurt, and then it was Evans and Jalen McMillan, to close the season with those two guys in Tampa Bay. So I think he's going to get an opportunity to be, a pretty significant playmaker offensively. So I like him as a borderline number 2, number 3 receiver.
You think that's going to work for him playing both sides of the field?
I'm curious to see how it's going to go. I mean, obviously, it's never been done before. We also said the same thing about Shohei Ohtani before he showed up. And, if you want to play the injury card, he got hurt in one aspect of his game. So Hunter's already dealing with an upper body injury. I know we're recording this on Thursday, that he missed the joint practices with the Dolphins. He was just working off on the side. So this is going to be a concern because he's not a big guy. I sort of think he's going to spend most of his time offensively and, defensively when they need him. So I hope he's going to stay healthy.
Chris Godwin came off of the PUP list for Tampa. He's not going to play this weekend. What do we make of him going into your drafts?
So this is frustrating for fantasy managers on a few levels. First off, it sucks that he's hurt, because last year he was great. And, when I'll just speak for myself, when I saw the 3-year contract extension that he got, I thought, okay, he's got a chance to come back in full force. Then the NFL draft happens. They draft Emeka Egbuka in the first round. And now there's some concerns about, who will continue to, lead this team in targets. And then this injury just continues to get worse and worse. The fantasy aspect of this is, you don't know now when to draft Godwin, because not having him for 4 weeks, I'll tell you where I have him. But if he was going to stay on the PUP list, at least if you had an IR spot in your fantasy leagues, you could stash him. Now he's going to take up a bench spot for you, where he's not going to play for what sounds like the first month, according to Adam Schefter's report. May not see him on the field until October. So I don't understand whether or not keep him on the PUP list. Doesn't make any sense to me. There is the potential maybe short-term IR if they go that route, which keep him out 3 or 4 games. So it could still be the same sort of technical standpoint in terms of games missed. But for me now, he's almost a double-digit round guy. Not having him at that point in the season, until October. The fact that Egbuka has looked as good as he does. And then, just at what point is he going to be back to himself? Because this is a guy that had an ACL tear 3 years ago, and it took 2 years until he started to look like himself again, which was last season when he was averaging 19 points per game.
Daniel Jones named the starter in Indianapolis. What does that mean?
Excuse me. It's better for it's better for the Colts passing game. It's not as much fun because Anthony Richardson could be a really special talent, but we just haven't seen it consistently. So in terms of just looking at what the Colts guys did with Joe Flacco last year, Jonathan Taylor was better. Josh Downs was better. Michael Pittman was better. So you assume just because Daniel Jones is a more is a more established quarterback and is not going to run as much, I was very careful what I said there because I'm not a big Daniel Jones guy, but very, he's a veteran. He will hopefully give those guys more opportunities to make plays. So I didn't go crazy in terms of bumping everybody up. Taylor's already a second round pick. He wasn't going to go much higher than that. Pittman and Downs. Downs got a hamstring injury. We have the wild card now of Tyler Warren, and I think he's going to be fun. I think this is the best thing for him. So Daniel Jones will lean on him quite a bit. So Jones is a top 10, Warren's a top 10 tight end, and Pittman and Josh Downs are good late round receivers in that round 8+ range.
Still no resolution right now with Terry McLaurin in Washington. If we have our draft and McLaurin does not have a new contract yet, where do we draft him?
He really hasn't moved much. He has fallen about a round in average draft position. He was at that 3-4 turn when training camp started. Now he's firmly in round 4. I'm not drafting him until round 6. So that blob that I mentioned, I'm out on Terry McLaurin. There's not going to be a lot of shares of McLaurin on my fantasy roster. There were 6 guys in the last 2 seasons to be holdouts or hold-ins. Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs in 2023. And then last year it was Jordan Love for a brief time. Actually, Tua for a brief time too. But Jordan Love, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, and Brandon Ayuk. Jamar Chase had a career season. Triple Crown winner. Amazing. Everybody else either suffered an injury at some point, struggled with their production, or was awful. Just completely awful. So small sample size, obviously, but lack of practice time, everything scares me from him. And then you look at what he did last year. Catches, yards, targets. Almost everything was the same for the last 5 seasons. Huge spike in touchdowns. Now, Jayden Daniels is awesome. Best quarterback he's ever played with. I was excited for McLaurin before all this happened, but I'm just not going to draft him based on the situation. I think his touchdowns come down, and I think everything else kind of stays the same, which puts him in that round 5-6 range for me at best.
What did you make of Caleb Williams' preseason debut? I mean, he was excellent for the most part. What does that mean for the Bears?
It's obviously encouraging. It was against Bill's backups, and I think we just needed to see something like this because all the training camp reports have been somewhat awful. Now, I think anybody who was panicking about that was making a mistake, because if you've been around the league long enough, you know that they're trying a lot of different things with a new coach or a new coordinator comes in or a young player to see what they can handle. So if he was turning the ball over in camp, I think that's almost positive more so than negative. Now, you don't want to see like bad plays, making mistakes because they're, throwing in tight windows or things like that. That's a different story. So the fact that he just looked competent is great. So I think that gives everybody that's investing in any Bears fantasy options some hope. I'm just a little bit concerned that there's too many mouths to feed for a quarterback that still has to take a big step forward. So DJ Moore is, in that blob. He's like wide receiver 28 for me. Romo Dunze is in that blob in the 30s. I take mostly Luther Burden and Colston Loveland because those are the 2 guys that this coach drafted and I think is going to want to cultivate and develop. Loveland clearly is going to need some help because, at that tight end position, he's just not established yet. So he probably draft 2. But Burden's is a great guy to stash on your bench. If he does play the slot role, if you like what Amon-Ra St. Brown has done for the Detroit Lions, this could eventually be Luther Burden. Maybe not to the same heights, but a lot of those opportunities.
What do we make of Matthew Stafford?
It's nerve-wracking, so almost all the Rams have been, downgraded. At least I have, so Puka Nacua started as wide receiver 4, shuffling some guys at the top. He's now wide receiver 7. Jameson Williams, Devontae Adams kind of hasn't really moved very much, but is a guy that I was taking early round 3. Now he's late round 3. I think the thing about it that is going to be somewhat encouraging, and I know if you watched I think it was the receiver documentary where Devontae Adams just, was beyond upset, having to play with Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo going through the Sean McVay car wash should be better. And so we get a better version of Garoppolo. So it may not be as awful as you think if Stafford's not there. But I don't think there's a team you could point to and say quarterback leaves and they lose. Well, I shouldn't say it. There's a lot of teams you can point to, but they're a Super Bowl contender with Stafford, and they're a 4 or 5 win team without him. Most likely. So it really crushes the value for those guys to a certain extent. But I don't think you want to panic just yet. Hopefully, he's going to practice and be ready to go.
How do we deal with the quarterback situation in New York with the Giants? Certainly Russell Wilson is going to start the season, but probably going to get Jackson Dart at some point. So what does that mean for their pieces?
I think Dart's look okay. Again, it's against backups, and you have to take it into account, but he hasn't played with Malik Neighbors very much or the first-team offensive line outside of a play. So he looks like he could have an opportunity here to have a nice future. Yes, it's nerve-wracking, but really the one guy is Malik Neighbors. And if you look at what he did last year, he was with Tommy DeVito and Daniel Jones and Tim Boyle and Drew Lock. I think Jackson Dart is probably better than those guys right now stepping in. And so with Russell Wilson, they're probably going to be in contention to win 7 or 8 games if he starts the majority of the season. So if they're in playoff contention, back end of the pack or middle of the pack, he's probably going to start the majority of the season. So it will be the best quarterback that Malik Neighbors played with to date. And the nice thing about it is Brian Daboll's offense is going to funnel targets to him. You saw the big play down the field for Russell Wilson in the preseason game against the Jets. Like, we're going to see a lot of that, a lot of throws to give him opportunities to make plays. And if you're just looking at, receivers that Russ has played with that have been dominant, DK Metcalf, third season or second season, amazing with Russ. Last year, George Pickens, his 6-game stretch was great. Cortland Sutton in Denver, the one season, he caught 10 touchdowns from Russ. Like, Malik Neighbors, as a talent, could be better than all those guys. And so I'm not really worried about who the quarterback is for him. It's just a matter of, will the targets still be there? And I think they will.
Finally, Jamey, while you're not going to get the rushing yards like Jaden Daniels did last year, how much of an impact can Cam Ward have fantasy-wise?
I think he'd be pretty good. First off, he's going to make Calvin Ridley better. And really that comes down to just not being Will Levis, because Levis last year was awful, as we all saw. And there were 4 games, I think, where Mason Rudolph started for the Titans. If you look at the numbers for Ridley with Levis versus Ridley with Mason Rudolph, he was about 14 plus PPR points per game. By comparison, it was like 12 points per game. So he, 2-point better per game average with a competent quarterback. And I think Cam Ward will lean on Calvin Ridley quite a bit. So like you said, you're not going to get the rushing production. It's not going to be even CJ Stroud as a rookie, so he's going to be in the low end number 2 quarterback mix. There'll be a stretch where he probably gets hot. Schedule's going to be great for him. He plays in a great division. So there'll be an opportunity where you may be using him during bye weeks, or if there's an injury to your team, certainly in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues. But I don't think in a 1 quarterback league, he's going to be a starter consistently throughout the season, unless, of course, he just surprises everybody. And he certainly has the talent and the ability to do so.
Great job, Jamey. Tell everybody how they can listen to you throughout the weekend and then leading up to next week.
CBS Sports, our podcast, Fantasy Football Today, probably the best place to find us. You can find it wherever podcasts are available. A lot of content on cbssports.com. And, of course, you could always follow me on Twitter. I'll do my best to answer your questions and help you get ready for your drafts.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamey. Appreciate you, man. We'll talk next week.
You got it. Thank you.